And today is Palm Sunday. Have you got your palms? Can you hold up your palms if you've got a palm and maybe give it a little wave? And this is the Sunday when the crowds welcome Jesus into Jerusalem. And they cry out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest heaven." It's the week before the crucifixion. And they're saying, "Yes, Jesus, Hosanna, you're the king. You're great." And a week later, they're shouting, "Crucify him. Crucify him." How fickle are they? How fickle are we? So what is this whole Palm Sunday? Well, the Jewish people have come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. It's the great Jewish annual celebration of liberation from the Egyptians, from their slavery. And here the Jews are again. But this time they want liberation from the Roman Empire. Who is going to be their liberator? And they're banking on Jesus, this man, this miracle maker. Surely he is the one who is going to politically overthrow the Romans. He is the one who is going to be their king. He is the one who is going to change things for the Jewish people. Yes, he is, they cry. Hosanna, they cry. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven. Yet, Jesus does not come into Jerusalem on a war horse, saying, "I am the king." No, he comes in on a donkey. A donkey. Now, there's something about donkeys. I think we've got a picture of my son on a donkey. This is here at Ascension. We have like a Christmas event here at the church with stalls, a Christmas fair, and all the children line up to sit on donkey. There's something about donkey that we associate with children. We associate with weakness, with our little donkey. Oh, sweet. And this so-called king comes in to Jerusalem on a donkey. On a donkey. It's the style of gentleness, not of grandeur. The gentleness of a donkey. Jesus knew what he was doing. Very bright, Jesus knew what he was doing. In the Gospels, in the Bible, Jesus walks everywhere. You don't hear anywhere else in the whole Bible of Jesus going around on a donkey. He walks everywhere. They walk everywhere. He walks with his disciples everywhere. And then, this one moment, he decides to get on a donkey. To get on a lowly, gentle animal and to just canter down the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. It was a deliberate act. He was communicating something to everybody there. He was communicating, yes, you're right, I am a king, but not the kind of king you think I am. I'm a different kind of king. And one thing that will mark my reign is gentleness. 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 And I felt led this morning to talk about gentleness. So whilst we're sitting here, can we just have a nice breathe in and a breathe out? Because we're going to talk about gentleness. Because that is part of what Jesus is saying about himself. I come on a donkey, not full of grandeur, but full of gentleness. And Jesus himself, when he speaks about himself elsewhere in Matthew chapter 11, verse 29, Jesus says this about himself. He says, "I am gentle and lowly in heart." And the Greek word there for gentle also means meek. Can you all say meek? Meek. Meek is weak, isn't he? Meek, meek, meek. It's a funny little word, meek. It feels weak. Weak, meek, meek. Little mouse. Weak, meek. Who wants to be meek? Who here thinks, yeah, I want to be meek? It just sounds weak straight away. Yet Jesus, the author of all that it is, the one who has put the breath into your lungs this morning, the one who has given you absolutely everything, says, I'm gentle and lowly in heart. I'm meek. And it suggests to me that if we miss gentleness, if we don't get our heads around meekness, then we miss Jesus. We miss who God really is. Part of who the living, loving God truly is. And so this morning, for those who like a title to a talk, this is the title. Are you ready? The strength of gentleness. The strength of gentleness. You see, that word in Greek for gentleness is actually used not of a donkey, but of a wild stallion that has been tamed. That word in the Greek for gentleness they use of a wild stallion, incredibly strong creature that has been tamed. And a tamed horse is just as strong as a wild horse, but the strength is under control. It's bottled up for the master's use. So gentleness is not weakness. It's not being a doormat. But it means not overreacting. It means being in control of your emotions. Gentleness is strength under control. I was chatting to someone who works here about gentleness. And she said to me, you know, gentleness is what I look for when I'm looking for a boyfriend. That's what I'm looking for, gentleness. Because there is something about gentleness which is about strength, but under control. I like that. Gentleness is strength under control. And this morning, I want us to reflect on gentleness. Gentleness, by looking at three key relationships in our lives. Gentleness and God, gentleness and others, and gentleness and ourselves. And so gentleness and God. Psalm 145 verse 8 says this, the Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in love. Despite some of the bad press maybe that God gets, according to the Bible, God is gentle, slow to anger and rich in love. Maybe you've never thought of God as being gentle. Maybe you see him as a harsh taskmaster, a strict parent. And part of that may be, I don't know, maybe part of our own projection of our own parents or fathers on God. We project upwards. Maybe that's part of it. Yet, Paul says this in Romans chapter 5, verses 6 to 8. Paul's writing, he says, you see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's an incredibly gentle response of the God of the universe to die for Marcus, to die for you, to die for us. What kind of God is a God who dies? No other religion has a God who dies. In many religions, a God who dies, that is blasphemy. No. God is great. God is big. God is one. God cannot die. Yet what do Christians believe? That God came to earth and from a place of gentleness died for you and for me. That's what happens. Today's Palm Sunday. Friday's Good Friday. Doesn't seem that good at the time when the apparent God of the universe is crucified excruciatingly on a cross. I love this poem by Edward Shillito called Jesus of the Scars. And there's one stanza that says this: the other gods were strong, but thou wast weak. They rode, but thou didst stumble to a throne. But to our wounds, only God's wounds can speak, and not a God has wounds, but thou alone. Our God, our Jesus, is gentle. Garden of Gethsemane, he's about to be crucified the next day. He's in the garden, and the soldiers come to arrest him, to take him off to be crucified. And what does his disciple Peter do? In that moment, Peter cuts off the ear with his sword of one of the soldiers. And even in that moment, under great deals of stress, what Jesus says, no, Peter, no, this is not the way we roll. This is not what we do. Jesus heals the man's ear. On the cross, Jesus is there, arms outstretched, being crucified. And at that moment, I might want to say, actually, I won't repeat what I'd say. What does Jesus say? Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Wow. So God and gentleness. God is gentle. Strength under control, the most powerful presence in the universe, yet he chooses to marshal that strength. He models gentleness to us. And so if our God, if our Jesus is actually gentle, what does that say about the way we are called to be, how we're meant to live our lives? We're called to be gentle with others. I was in such a mood. So my wife and I had friends round. We live in Balham, and we had gone onto the Ringo app because they'd driven to be with us. We'd put 4 hours on. You can only do 4 hours at a time. Nod if you know what I mean. You know what I mean. You can only do 4 hours. And we'd done it on the app, and they had lunch, and they've got kids, and we've got kids, and we're having a nice time. And then there was this 8-minute period of time when the 4-hour parking ran out, and then we quickly got the app out, and we did the next 4 hours. I mean, you know, it cost us our mortgage and all the rest of it to do this parking, right? And there was an 8-minute gap, and my friend said, wouldn't it be really unlucky if in that 8-minute period someone had come and put a parking ticket on our car? You know, out of the 8 hours and 8 minutes or whatever it was, wouldn't it be like, you know, ridiculous if in that 8 minutes we got a ticket? Wouldn't that be so funny? I said, yeah, it'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it? And I go out just as we're doing the app, and they got a ticket. And the parking attendant is halfway down the road. And it was my day off, so I wasn't wearing my collar. And I thought, I'm going to get him. 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 And I legged it down the road with my slippers on. I was running down Rossiter Road. I thought, I'm going to get him. I get him. Oi! He turned around. I was so angry. I was so angry. We'd done the right thing, all except for those 8 minutes. And he turned around and he said, What is it? And I realized it was Tony, the parking attendant who does Malwood Road. And he goes, Vicar, what is it? And I said, Tony, you've just put a ticket on my friend's car. It was 8 minutes. I'm really angry. He said, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. He said, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. And he put his arm around me. And then I looked down and I went, it's all right, Tony. It's all right. He said, yeah, I'm really sorry. He says, this is the beginning of the school holidays, isn't it? He says, that's probably some of your money for the kids. I said, yeah, it probably is. He said, I'm so sorry. I said, don't worry. I said, Tony, I actually feel bad now. No, it's all right. It's all right. And we kind of had a hug, and I went back. I walked through the door, and everyone said, you know, what did you say to him? Go on, tell us, what did you say? I said, no, it's all right. It's all right. Tony's gentleness just diffused my anger. All of a sudden, his gentleness diffused my inner anger. And we often feel that if we get mad, we'll feel better. But even the secular research, I was looking at Bushman. Have you read the Bushman research from 2002? From the, from the Social Psychology Bulletin? Have you read that one? No? Well, Bushman writes this: these findings showed that supposedly venting anger through actions such as hitting pillows or whatever actually increases anger levels, and more troublingly, increases subsequent aggressive behavior. Bushman found that doing nothing at all for 2 minutes was actually more effective in reducing anger, whereas punching a sandbag for as long as one wanted while thinking of an offending person increased anger towards that person. And the summary of Bushman's research, that I know you've all read, is this: these results contradict any suggestion that hitting the punching bag would have beneficial effects because one might feel better after doing so, which is what advocates of catharsis often say. People did enjoy hitting the punching bag, but this was related to more rather than less subsequent aggression towards a person. Hitting a punching bag does not produce a cathartic effect. It increases rather than decreases subsequent aggression. Amazing research and insight. But actually the Bible 3,000 years ago got there in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Here's a tip. When someone raises their voice, lower yours. Don't ratchet it up, just do the opposite. And when you're doing that, when people say, how do I live as Jesus lived? What do I do? This is one way of living as Jesus lived. Jesus is gentle. When they raise their voice, we lower ours. I've learned, I've thought about, in preparing today, all the times I've got angry, especially at work. I can't think of one single time where actually it worked out to my benefit. I literally can't think of one time. Pastor Rick Warren says this. I love the Americans. They have something that rhymes. Are you ready? I am never persuasive when I am abrasive. Kind of rhymes, doesn't it? I am never persuasive when I am abrasive. But it's true. There's something about gentleness that disarms. And it earns respect. I remember, this is one good story, where I had, in my previous church, I explained a decision I'd taken to a group of the young adults I was leading. And they were really angry with the decision. They told me how angry they were. And inside, I wanted to say how difficult this decision had been. And I wanted to be angry back. And actually, I just listened and said, I really hear you. And I lowered my voice. And I went home and I thought, oh gosh, they probably think I'm really impotent, a really, really weak leader. And the next day, one of them came to me and said, we thought you were going to freak out when we said that. And you didn't. You didn't freak out at all. And actually being gentle leads to even more respect, not less. There's a lot of anger out there in the world. And actually, when we practice the way of gentleness, we're living as Jesus lived. We're on that donkey. And I just want to finish with one final thing. Gentleness with ourselves. Some of us, let me get this right. If a friend treated us as we treated ourselves, for some of us, we wouldn't be friends with that person. Some of us are not even that gentle with ourselves. And there's all sorts of ways in which we are ungentle with ourselves. Maybe it's perfectionist tendencies. Maybe it's comparing ourselves to others. Maybe it's we feel harsh about our body image. Maybe it's not going to bed on time. Maybe it's working too hard. Maybe it's just not allowing ourselves permission to have a bad day. Can I just check, does anyone ever have a bad day? Can I just check? Yeah. Yeah. It's all right. They happen, apparently. And maybe we just need to go, oh yeah, this is a bad day. Yeah, they happen. We need, greatest commandment, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. There is something there that's saying we need to love and show gentleness to ourselves. And actually, one of the reasons we sometimes find it so hard to show gentleness to others is because we're not even showing gentleness to ourselves. And so actually, we are called to be gentle with ourselves as well. So, the strength of gentleness comes from God. He is the one who is gentle and compassionate. He is the one who is slow to anger and swift in love. With others, gentleness actually diffuses anger. Gentleness is persuasive. Gentleness earns respect. And with ourselves, ungentleness is self-defeating. Gentleness is key to loving ourselves, which allows us to better love God and others. So I want to say that this Palm Sunday, this Holy Week, this Easter, can you just put your hand on your heart for a moment as I finish? Because let's open our hearts afresh again to King Jesus, who rides into Jerusalem on a donkey and says to each one of us this Holy Week, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Amen.